Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. It's great for us to gather today and share a little information on finance and the new budget for the fiscal year. And we'll touch on a couple of other items as well. We had a good session this morning, so we wrapped that up, and pleased to be here again this afternoon. So we have quite a bit of information to cover, and for the most part, Gordon and I are going to tag team the presentation. We'll get through the information and then we'll have a question and answer session at the end. And also we'll remain up here after the formal session is done in case anyone has questions that you'd rather bring up in private. And we'll try to keep it to 1 hour and get everybody in and out on time. So we're going to kick it off with Cindy Simonk's going to come up and share a little information about a cost savings task force. I asked Cindy to chair this cost savings task force a little over a year ago to look at areas where we could become more efficient, save money, or avoid costs. And she assembled a very great dynamic group, and they've accomplished a lot of work in a relatively short amount of time, and that definitely translates into some financial savings and benefits for the ARC. So I'm going to let Cindy start it off, and then we'll get into the other budget presentation. Let me catch myself up here. All right, there we go. Cindy.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for joining us after lunch. I know it's really nap time. We were just saying it's so dim lights in here and it's cold. Boy, I wish like I had a pillow and a blanket. Be a really good nap in here. Well, I just want to talk to you real quickly about the task force that we put together last year. We were super excited about the progress, and I have to tell you that I was really surprised at how well everybody came together and what we were able to do. So as Steve said, we brought together a group of people, and it was not necessarily the directors on campus. It was the people in the departments that see the bills and pay the bills and can see what the expenses are running through their departments, and take a really good close look at what little amounts that we could find that we could fix. And it really became big amounts, not just little amounts. And I told the story this morning, I'll tell it again, sorry. I work with the Lutheran Church. I'm a Lutheran, and I'm in the women's ministry there, the LWML, and they have a program that's called Mite. They gather mites. And mites are small amounts. They're the change that you have at the end of your day, and you take them and you put them in a little box. And then when you go to the women's meeting, you take that box and dump it into a bigger box. And then they go to a district meeting and dump that amount into another larger box. And it ends up becoming a really large amount of money that they then contribute to the missions of the Lutheran Church. And so I like to think of this task force kind of like that gathering of mites. And so we challenged our group to find things in their departments that would help us save money here, so that we would not have to spend so much money on expenses, things that maybe we can do differently, new vendors, maybe we bring the work in-house instead of hiring contractors to do it. And so we've got a few slides here that show some of the things that our team put together of cost savings. I'm not going to read this slide, y'all can read the slide, but it's bringing things in-house. It's changing the way we do our HVAC servicing. There's a uniform program in the maintenance department where they changed out who was doing their uniforms and saved some money there. As you all know, Cleanscape's donated, and so we have Christmas decorating done now. We don't use staff hours to do that, so we're not paying overtime to do the Christmas decorating. We pulled in all of the demo and painting within the UTO, and as you can see, that was a really large savings of money there. In our department, we took the fax machines that were running off of analog lines, which are becoming obsolete and very hard to keep and maintain. And those were running about $152 a month per line, and we're doing digitization of those, and now it's $25 a line. So things like that. So as you can see, if you look at the total, so this is realized savings, like we know that we saved this money, $361,000 this year. just in 1 year by this team finding this money. So yes, thank you. They did an amazing job. And so we're going to keep going. And so I challenged them to find things that we would do now newly in the 2026 fiscal year that would save money. And that's this slide. These are things that have been identified that we are going to try to save this year. So it's standardizing all of our appliances so that the parts are just one kind of part, one thing for those appliances. In the Spectrum contract, which I put you through recently, I hope you're enjoying your new channels and your new internet. We have a few things left to do, but in that contract, we were able to negotiate $2,000 less every month. So we saved $24,000 and you got more. So that was a really cool thing. So as you can see, we are projecting that we will save an additional $133,000 this year on top of what we have already identified from last year. So we're looking at $500,000 that this little team and their mites put together have saved the ark. So just good news, good message, wanted to let you know, because that will flow through obviously to Gordon and his budgeting process for the departments. And so good news to share with all of you, and we'll keep going and see what else we can find. So off to you.
Well, thanks, Cindy, for chairing that committee and the great work they've been able to do with cost avoidance and with Spectrum. I know it's a major undertaking, so thank you very much and the team. Okay, Gordon, you want to come on up and we'll go through the actual budget pot. Oh, there we go.
So I have my water. Good afternoon. Can you hear me now? This is not a Spectrum connection. No, I just have to say, you don't want to be on the other side of the negotiating table. This lady, she can be good cop and she can be bad cop, depending on how much leverage she has to apply. So, and you see the results. Just want to say a few words. I'm glad you're here today, and hopefully we can explain the budget. I'll move this down here. Maybe that's a little better. Maybe we can explain some things about the budget and going forward where we're at now and those things. We had looked at this slide next. As in, you can see this slide, it does double. It's actually, you can tell at the top there, that's where I started on the Ozempic plan. And it's my weight loss. It also serves in inflation in the country as well. And as you see, everything's kind of leveled out now a little bit, and that also coincides with my weight loss plan. So you've seen this before. You've seen it as it spiked up there in prior years and now is coming back down. The CPI is what this reports. And as we've noted before, CPI is a nice measurement from our folks in Washington, but it doesn't include labor. And because it's based on what you would purchase for your home, out in the country, in the city, your things that you need for your home. And most people don't hire much labor at home, but we do. About 55% of our expenses here are labor. And so it's a kind of a blunt instrument to apply to what our costs would be. And if you go back in the past, you see where we've had 3.5% for rate increases in the past. Meanwhile, the CPI in those years has been much below that. So labor has always exceeded the CPI to a certain extent, and that drives our costs, as we'll talk about a little bit later. Let's go to the next slide. And this is something that I really love to talk about. It's our Medicare TRICARE revenue. And now what does that mean exactly? I don't think there's anybody in here, in this room right now, that's on Medicare, getting those services, skilled nursing. It's in our nursing center. And over the years, we've expanded our capabilities in our nursing center from 12 approved beds to 12 certified beds to 20. And then a couple of years ago, we went all the way to 91. So the whole nursing center is Medicare approved, Medicare certified. Now we'll never get to where we have every bed with Medicare. But that gives us a logistic capability if you can be in any different bed, still be on that payer source. Now, TRICARE also comes through for most of our residents to extend that Medicare stay once they're on Medicare. They come out of the hospital with maybe they have to have 3 hospital days, midnights, and then they have something where they need skilled care or they need therapy. And that's where the Medicare reimburses us about $500 a day, anywhere from $490 to $540. TRICARE is in that same range. And what that does for us is that it boosts our revenue, but it also boosts our expenses. And traditionally, in my entire career, it's been about $100 a day that there is that profit margin. In most of nursing, there's no profit margin. Your nursing home industry overall has struggled over the years with a 1 or 2% profit margin if they're lucky. And if you'll notice, a lot of nursing home companies are going out of business or closing on purpose. They're building new senior living centers. They don't have a nursing home. They don't have any nursing. They don't have assisted living either, because those are places where more money is spent than what is brought in for revenue. But one thing that it helps us here, and I wanted to share this because not everything, as we'll get into the rate increases over the years and different things, and you've seen those come out of your pocketbooks every year, but it's not all, everything that we do is not based on the revenue that comes in from the folks that are sitting in this room or sat in this room at 10 o'clock. We also have a very strong Medicare TRICARE revenue source, and as you can see, it's about $4.5 million this past year. And then the direct expenses, whether it be therapy primarily, and then the other thing that has to be paid for by the community is the pharmaceuticals and the prescriptions, except things that are like the high-priced cancer drugs and those sorts of extra expenses that way. I think. And you can see that there's about a 2.7 million actual profit margin there. Now, we still have to take care of folks, so that eats into that. There's also the nursing care that eats away at this margin, but it still is a healthy margin. Go to the next slide. Let me get this right. And as I talked about the census per day, it's come up dramatically over the last few years. And like I say, in 2022, I think we only had the capacity of only 20. And then as we've gone through the years and been able to increase that, part of that big increase is that we've been able to tap into the TRICARE care, which we were not before. And so if you go through your Medicare days, you burn those out, it's about 100 days. And then beyond that, if you're still showing progress, you can still collect, we can still collect as a reimbursement source, and we can still provide that care under your TRICARE policies. So that's helped us immensely. This is, as we look at over the past years, this last year we averaged 23, a little better than that. We budgeted 20. You can see the budget is the red line, the actual is the blue line. And then this next year, we're looking at 21.5 to bump that up a little bit. Meanwhile, we've been running in the low 20s and even higher for the last few months here. And that's helped us immensely as far as the profitability of the nursing center. Let's go to the next slide.
Is that beds?
What?
20, what is the 20?
20. That's people.
Okay.
Yeah, these are, like they say in nursing, heads in beds. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. Now these next few slides show the expenses that we've seen increase over the past few years with major categories like this is property insurance. You know, a couple years ago here we talked about the big increase from about $323,000 on the entire campus, which was low actually compared to other communities and other comparable insured properties. And then in 1 year, basically it jumped from 323 to $1,256,000. And insurance, to insure a property like ours, you have to go to insurers that are worldwide and they're big. And sometimes they don't want us. This particular year when it jumped, we went out to 42 different companies through our agents, and 41 out of the 42 turned us down. They said, no, we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to do nursing. We're not going to do big properties all on one site. So we did find Travelers who was willing to insure us. And even so, it was a big increase. Well, what happens is you think about the floods nationwide and fires out in California. All those are money losers for the insurance companies. Well, at some point, the pendulum swings back the other way and their rates go up and their premiums go up because they're a business as well. And so across the board, the insurance premiums went up dramatically on property insurance. As you know, there's certain states, I think it's Florida, California, personal houses and real estate, it's almost impossible to actually get to insure your house because all the insurance companies have left the whole state. There's just so many disasters that come through. So that's another thing that we have to pay, and we have to keep the place insured. Another thing here is, I went the wrong way. Someday I'll figure this out. Okay, food costs. We'll talk about food costs a little bit. We've seen big food costs and serious food cost increases basically since COVID. And if you've been to HEB in the last 5 years, you've seen what used to be in a $50 bag. Now it's a $150 bag. And we'll talk about the specific things overall later on, but this is what we spend on food. And for the whole campus has gone up dramatically over the last few years. And that's another cost that we have to cover. Go to the next slide, employee health insurance. You ask, well, why do we do this? Well, the Affordable Care Act mandates that we offer a employee health insurance plan that fits within the box of the Affordable Care Act. Some people call it Obamacare, but so we have to offer this. And then besides that, we have to offer a competitive plan because everywhere else that people work, in the city of San Antonio, the state of Texas, the United States, insurance is offered to employees. And unless we compete and have a priced plan that is comparable to other employers in the area, people will move not just for their wages, but for their plan to insure themselves and their families. So this cost has also gone up dramatically over the last 3 years. Then just some line items basically over the last year. We talked about food, we talked about property insurance, we talked about employee health, and then other things like trash removal has gone up dramatically. Infectious waste removal has gone up dramatically. Not that we've had more or really more trash. No, it's just the same sort of services have gone up dramatically. And then the real metric there at the bottom is the Emma report, 3 quarters over 3 quarters each year, 24 and 25, going up by 4.7 for everything all in. So we've seen those come through over the last few years. Then protein, we all like to have some eggs and sirloin, salmon and shrimp, and you see how those things have gone up. Everything but turkeys have gone up, and I think it's easy to create an overabundance of turkeys. They reproduce pretty fast, they grow fast, but the other eggs, we've seen a dramatic increase in eggs, but they've come back down. So anything with a poultry, you can see wide swings in that. Sirloin, according to what my reading is, we're at the low point of the cattle cycle, and I used to raise cattle a long time ago when I had all my hair, and it was a different color. Okay? But the cattle cycle is very important for any kind of beef product because prices go up for cattle. Ranchers raise too many cattle, and then there's an oversupply of cattle and beef, and prices go back down. And producers then go out of business or go bankrupt. And at the top of the cycle, they make some money, then they want more, and they end up, many of them go bankrupt as the cycle goes back down. Meanwhile, sirloin and beef go up considerably. Sometimes they kind of stay up there too. Next slide, just some common things. I had this slide 4 or 5 years ago, 21, 22 was the dramatic increase that we saw there. So I updated it with some things that you might buy, go to HEB or wherever, bacon. And I often wonder, you see a product there, what happened to preparation A, B, C, and D? Well, we don't really know. Somehow they got to, what would that be? Is that the 8th letter of the alphabet? H, okay. So they got to the 8th iteration and they decided to sell it. But there's other things on the market too. I don't know, there's no connection. I'm not saying there's a connection, but Martha Stewart has a wrinkle cream that's out there for about $130 for a little cup of it. I noticed that this morning as I was shopping on Amazon. So I didn't buy any, it's a little out of my price range. But what happened to the other variations of, our famous product there? So this is just an update of where we were 4 years ago. You see several things. That's a really cheap Big Mac combo. I just got one a few days ago, or someone told me about it. A friend told me they went to got McDonald's and they got a Big Mac combo. It was over $10. So I don't know. We'll see. But those are all like off the internet lately and HEB online, where you can get anything. So where does this all come down to at the end of the day? I created this chart to just show the recent rate increases that we've had, 5.8, 5.8, 4.8, now 4.5, and where those started in 2022, and how that graphs out on the red line. And then our overall, our expenses coming through on the blue line. But I took out those earlier expenses that I talked about from Medicare and TRICARE, because that skews it even worse. It's really not fair. It's not an apples to apples. So this is without the extra Medicare expenses. And this just shows on the blue line, our actual expenses going up 25% higher than they were just a few years ago. Meanwhile, we're going up on the rate increases, as you can see, and that affects everyone here. Then we get to the real slide that everybody looks forward to, and I'm sure that probably everybody has already heard about this number. It was announced different places, but the rate increase is 4.5. And what does that do for us though? On the operating rate, we come in at 100.5, which is an improvement over last year, or this year, which we budgeted for 101.8. And what 100 means is that we're break even. If we're over 100, we're spending more than what we take in for revenue. Well, that's not really sustainable in the long term. It's mitigated greatly by entrance fees. And but the goal is to get to below 100 and stay below 100. Meanwhile, you have to do that in stair steps. So we'll see that a little bit later, where it shows the previous years and then coming down to 100.5. Next slide. Well, what does that mean as far as what we're doing this year? Operating rate, 1% is out of 40 million, 1% is 400,000. So it takes 400,000 to move that needle by 1%. Then always the question is, what about the employees? And we're taking care of them, but not very much really, but as much as we can and still fit within this budget at 2.5% rate increase, wage increase for the employees. Then, as I alluded to earlier, the budgeted move-ins and entrance fees here at 38. In previous years, we budgeted at 48, and this past year, the year we're just ending is going to be in the low 20s, and so you can see the fluctuation from 47 down to 21, back up to 43 last year. Last year on this date, or June 30th, we were at 90%. And so we're still hovering there in the 86s, 87s, which I think is astounding actually, given the low number of entrance fees. And then also the other effect, the other way, you have people moving in, you have people moving out. Okay? And the people that pass away through the year. And that can't be avoided. So, at least as far as we know. Go on to this next slide. Let's put this 4.5% in a little bit of perspective here. We went out to the San Antonio area CCRCs that would communicate with us, and they'll talk, but mainly just to Cordy. But they clued us in as far as what their rate increases had been in the recent past. And then as national average from Ziegler, this is 1,911 life plan communities all over the nation, and what they had recently, and they not only projected going forward, but what they had in 2024, as far as 5%, 4.4%, basically. And then where ours comes in, not at the bottom, but not at the top, at 4.5. So we're all these communities are pretty much in the same boat that we're in, rising costs, and they have to balance that with resident satisfaction and resident retention. You have this next slide, which is just what that difference would be, about 4.5 and per the average monthly maintenance fee of $4,100 would be $185 a month. And then what does this rate increase do for us on the whole year? Starting September 1st is $1.1 million. Sometimes these questions come up, so I just go ahead and put them in a slide. We have this news, basically, it's the same news you've had for last year, is you'll very soon by October, by June. I'm like my mother calling for me when I was on it. I had 3 older brothers, and by the time she got to me, I knew I was in trouble. June 30th. Okay. By the end of this month, or July 2nd, we will have, you'll each have new letters with your rate increase, individual letters, effective September 1st. This is just a history of the rate increase for the last few years, back to 2016. Primarily 3.5 to begin with, and then above that, since inflation took off in 21. And then as you can see, there's coming back down, mitigating somewhat. And then operating in history, which has been all over the board. And the real driver here is number of entrance fees. We saw that graph earlier. But as entrance fees increase, then the operating rate comes down, and conversely, vice versa. So really an average of 700,000 for the last 11 years as far as the operating rate losses. And a nice graph, in case you like it in graph form. Here we have a graph. So just showing those numbers and what they look like, and trending down, but need to trend down faster. Then independent living census, and this is a projection. This is our budget. You have to budget some increase, and this was a hard calculation. It's 1 more per month. So it wasn't difficult, but to me it's attainable. Like I said, a year ago we were at 90, and we've had we have a low number of entrance fees this past year. And as we talk about those entrance fees over this past year, many things came to mind. We have many explanations for that. Different anecdotal things like the election, the economic uncertainty, however you want to call it, that we've all experienced, and people are more comfortable staying at home and not moving in, not making that move into a CCRC. But we have a definite change in the last few months, in that I would say we're not quite back to the pace of 2024, but we have 8 new entrance fees lined up for this first quarter, which is all good news. Then these 2 slides are just big numbers, and as you can see, the 39 million of the revenue that comes in from what we actually do at the ARC, and then the service expenses, utilities, food, paying labor, about 35 million, with a service net income of 4.6. Excuse me, it's a really dry area up here at the front for some reason. The air here is just must be like 10% humidity. Anyway, the service revenue then on this side, on this slide, it follows through. The 729,000 comes from our investments, and the revenue that's interest and dividends, not capital gains, but actual money coming in from interest and dividends. We can count that towards the operating rate. And then as you come down to the other side of the ledger, you've got the 35 million from the slide before, and the bond interest, which we pay every year on our bond debt, plus a few sorted random expenses from the support foundation. Then at the 200,000 that we're budgeting for the loss this next year, gives us the 100.5 as an operating rate. So this was a slide that I mentioned a little bit earlier, and it shows the progress over the past 3 years as far as budgeting and as far as we're coming in. Each year we come in pretty close to this budget, really. I think that for this year, 2025, we're going to be at 101.8, 9, 10 in there, maybe 102 plus a little bit, pretty close, even with the low number of entrance fees. And that's because of the higher Medicare and TRICARE revenue that we talked about right off the bat. And as you can see from 24, 25, and 26, the operating rate coming down nicely, somewhat each year, and a good strong jump down this year from 700,000 loss to 200,000 loss. And then the service fee increases also coming down. So that's a lot of progress from 5.848 to 4.5. And then we also have, each year we have employee rate increases. Back there in 24, it was 3.5, and then down to 2.5 and 2.5. Capital budget, just the big numbers there. I've got a slide coming up that's more detailed. Here we go. The capital budget in thousands, You can see the big number there at the top is the unit turnover, and that's due, the change in that is just due to budgeting 48 instead of 38, 38 instead of 48, and the big drop there. Everything else pretty much the same, except for about a 5% inflation factor coming into it. Past years, we've had to add in as much as 15%, but some of the rate increases that we see for materials and labor are starting to mitigate a little bit on the capital side. So really the change from year to year as far as the budget is 2.3 million. Come to the next slide. Now this slide is new. We don't talk about these very much, except anecdotally. We might throw out a number of what we spent on X, the chillers, the generators, but over the last, what would this be, 4 years, we spent over 11 million on some big, expensive projects. Several of them here in the high rise. You can see air conditioning is campus-wide. The chill towers outside, those chill towers. And then you've got up at the top the high rise chillers, which are the machines that are big, they're massive, 20 feet long, and they're in the bowels of this building here. But they were 35 years old. They were created, built in, had to tear down a wall to get them out. They were 35 years old, and they run continuously. They run 24/7, 365 for 35 years. So anybody can do the math on that, I'll be impressed. How many hours they had on those machines. And they died. So we got new ones, and those were expensive. And as you can see, the fire panel and the high-rise sprinkler pipes, all throughout this, we've kind of forgotten maybe, hopefully, but many of you were probably displaced as some of those installations were pursued and completed. So it's not an easy process, it's not a nice process, but it's basically extremely necessary on an aging campus that we have. Now the employee retention credit, we've talked about this before. The claim was put in January of 24, and that's where it's been ever since. It goes clear back to 2021. It's basically a COVID recovery program that was out there, and they never did shut it off till the program actually sunsetted in March of this year. You still could apply for it. Now there was movement last year by the Congress to, this is expensive, we got to cut this off, cut off new claims. Well, we got in before any of that came through the Congress, but they never had the votes to totally cut it off as far as the Congress is concerned. So this is a valid claim. I called up IRS on May 12th, and if you want to have nice background music for your apartment, you just call them, put yourself on hold, and no matter what your question, you're going to be there about an hour, like I was. So after an hour, a nice lady came to the phone and she answered all my questions. And then I asked some more questions, and we asked some more questions. And by that time, she was ready to be done with me. But anyway, so we got, our claims are there, and our claims, her records line up with what we have as far as when we made the claim, the exact quarters and for the amount that we're claiming. But all she could tell me was in process. And I asked about 4 different questions trying to get more out of that. But it's like, IRS, it's in process. Please, I have somebody else to talk to. So I don't want to talk to them again, so if I was troublesome, they don't know my name. Anyway, so as we found out then we're in good shape as far as our claims are there. But when we collect, we don't know. Now one tiny bit of information, I don't know whether it really, hopefully it's good news. I just learned from the news in the last few days that the new commissioner of the IRS he was just approved by the Congress, and he's a former congressman, but somewhere in a prior life, just recently, obviously this program is not that old, but somewhere in a prior life, he had a consulting firm helping people to make these claims. So he earned fees, like you see there's Clifton Larson Allen, national accounting firm is earning some pretty good fees out of this. He was earning fees on people collecting and making these claims of the ERC. So, and now he's the head of the IRS. So I don't know whether that has any effect, but hopefully maybe on a good day it will. I think he'll have a hard time personally cutting off these claims or going back against what he himself has personally pursued in his private business. Don't know. Not sure how that works down in Washington, never been there. We're looking forward to collecting that money soon, but we don't know when. Next is Steve with his closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Great job, Gordon. That is an incredible amount of information, and good job putting the budget together. When we talk about rate increases, I always like to remind residents that we do have a charitable assistance fund. If anyone runs into difficulties, we have over $2 million in an endowment, and I think we have 4 residents on that plan right now. But it is available if residents have come upon financial distress, through no actions of their own. So just want to remind everybody of that. Before we get into the Q&A, just a couple highlights as we head into a new year. And again, thanks Gordon and Cindy for your preparations on this. We're going to continue to focus on resident satisfaction, occupancy, finance, infrastructure and maintenance, as you've seen, strategic planning, philanthropy, and employee relations. Those are kind of the big 7. So, resident satisfaction, we're going to try to put in a renewed focus on that. We've been through a lot of renovations, construction, COVID, floods, and now I'm hoping we're getting back to a little bit of normal, whatever the new normal is. And we really want to raise the resident satisfaction, as that's been a challenge. And it always is when you try to balance finances and costs and services and satisfaction. It's a real balancing act. So we're going to continue to elevate that. And part of this initiative is Debbie's not here this afternoon. She was with us this morning, but really her promotion as COO into some key areas to really help us look at some service opportunities and resident satisfaction, and continuing to really align independent living, continuum of care, aging in place, healthcare, assisted living. That's really going to work well as we move forward. I also just want to highlight our strategic plan. Hopefully you're keeping tabs on that and monitoring the progress. We do report metrics out every time we have a board meeting, and that's shared with the residents. But a lot of work and a lot of targets around occupancy and financial goals, quality of care, resident satisfaction and engagement. We're tracking those items. But we also have a lot of developmental programs that aren't necessarily tied to those metrics, but it's community engagement, where we're out in the broader community more, developing partnerships for education, for employees, Northeast Independent School District, Baylor for their dietitian program, UT Health Science Center, which Carol has been a big part of and has really helped us with caregivers and knowledge here at the ARC. And we have nursing programs that rotate through the healthcare center to become future nurses. We do our own CNA program. So we're really trying to develop future healthcare professionals and being part of the broader community. But a big renewed effort into volunteerism, getting external volunteers to come to the ARC, and how can we leverage that? And also residents and employees volunteering out in the broader community. It's been a little bit of a challenge with our eligibility guidelines. We haven't always broad-based advertised because everybody isn't eligible to live here. So it's another difficult area to get the word out, build our name recognition, the name of the ARC, when really 90% of the people that live in this area can't live here. So that's just a fact. But we'll continue working on those engagement areas. One of our other big committees is repositioning, just looking at the changing times and the changing needs, wants of residents and people coming in. So out of that committee came the expanded eligibility to all veterans and federal employees. That was a big change. The rental program, which has really helped the ARC. I think we're up to 9 folks that have come in under that program. The new Life Steps, Aging in Place. All those genesis of those came through some of these committees, also through leadership and staff and board expertise, but we're all working together to move these forward. Continuum of care, we look at the ARC and the traditional business model that's changing, and it changes every day. So that's why we have to look at where are there gaps in this continuum and how do we fill those. Some of those are expanding the Medicare program. We used to have 8 beds, now we have 91. That's one example. Assisted living, having those settings, the new Life Steps Aging in Place should kind of fill that gap between independent living and healthcare. So a lot of good options and programs are coming out of these. The ARC Fit group, which is another committee, they look at technology and facilities and how we can leverage some of those cost savings, but also those of you that have been here a while, our technology has changed quite a bit, hasn't it? In 5 years, 7 years, however long you've been here. So we continue to look at anything technology-wise, electric vehicles, so many things are coming at us that we need to be able to respond and be prepared. And then we have one whole committee that focuses on resident satisfaction and engagement. And they track participation and all these activities and programs and the things that Carrie does through the fitness and wellness and yoga. I'm telling you, there's no other place that has this many programs, this many activities. We're really an anomaly, and that's on purpose because we want to be one of the best and we want to have services and programs that you all want. So, lastly but not least, the employee relations piece, employee development. I'm very proud that we've kept our employee turnover below 38% for these last 2 years. Now, the industry norm is anywhere from 50 to 70%, and some positions are even higher than that. So just try to think about that for a minute. You're losing 4 out of every 10 employees continuously every year. That's a challenge, and this field is tough. But we've done a great job of keeping our retention much below the industry norms, and we have long tenure, dedicated people that have been here a long time. And this can be a challenging place, but they want to be here. They want to make the lives of the residents better, and they want to give back, and we continue to really grow that area. The last thing I'll touch on before the Q&A, our healthcare team, some of them were here this morning, but we've made great strides with occupancy, which that lifts all ships, the rising tide. But Gordon talked about IL and the focus on independent living. But I'll tell you, our assisted livings are at about 95% occupancy. Healthcare is the mid-80s, and the Medicare is really kind of off the charts. So in addition to that, they've done a phenomenal job on the quality of care. We are still a 5-star rated Medicare facility, and there's only 10% of those in the nation. And we just had our annual state inspection, and they were here with us for a whole week, and we got 3 minor citations. The national average is about 8, the Texas average is about 7.5, and we had 3 very minor citations. So they've done an incredible job. With the environment, needs a little TLC over time as we look at healthcare and just the modernization of it. But I'll tell you, the quality of care has been top notch and outstanding, and Mary Bradley and Faye and Enrique and David, the team over there are really working hard, and they don't always get as much recognition in this setting. And also just want to plug our resident engagement. We have 4 voting members on our board of directors of residents. That's more than any community I've heard of, really anywhere in the nation. Our compadres across the city have 1, and that person's been on there a very, very long time. So I think we've done a good job with resident engagement, not only on the board, but sprinkled through all these committees and work groups and resident council. There's definitely a large amount of engagement. So, just in closing, before we do the Q&A, we're very happy to continue to try to make sure the ARC is in the right place, and we're here for the future. It is a balancing act in a lot of ways, but I want to thank all the residents and our board members and the staff members that are in here. We have an incredible team, and we're all working hard toward a common goal. So with that, I will kick it off for the Q&A. And I think we have a couple of microphones here, please. So we take questions and compliments and good feel stories and compliments here, questions there. All right, I reversed it this morning. Go ahead.
Are the slides available?
Yes, the slides will be in the library and on the portal.
I can't read that fast. Wait, I have another question. Mike, what am I doing to you?
Test. Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking.
The, where in the continuing maintenance do foundations appear? To care of the foundations? I'm just aware that there are a lot of older trees and those kind of things that affect the foundations of the cottages.
Yeah, that would typically be under the capital budget that we have: foundations, cottage roofs, structures, irrigation, any major items like that. Typically is in the capital budget. And I think Gordon, we had the slide of about $11 million over the last several years. And, we continue to look at that. It's a lot to catch up on, I have to say. There was some deferred maintenance, and I think we've gotten a lot of that taken care of now. But that's where those areas are addressed.
First of all, I love living here, and I want to thank y'all for all y'all have done to make living here such a wonderful experience. I do have one minor question, which seems strange. How is what is sold on house account and dining dollars in Liberty Market determined? I'm tired of Cheerios. They're on house account. Raisin Bran they're on dining dollars. Raisin Bran's house account. That makes no sense to me. So I would just appreciate knowing how it is determined.
The main draw, the line that's been drawn is between things that are more expensive or less expensive, and that's based on our cost. And some of the things that to obtain those at a wholesale level are extremely high because it's a small store and we have to buy from wholesalers that sell to small stores. We can't go to HEB and get from Kellogg's Raisin Bran like they do, and they buy a whole busload every few hours of Raisin Bran. We have to go to wholesalers that supply that. Now, that drives our costs up, and there's a point where the higher priced items go to house account and the lower cost items go to dining dollars. It's just that simple. I didn't stay up late at night to figure that out. It's just that when you look at through the cost of what it costs us, and that whole process that we went through a year ago to make that determination was not very popular, okay? But we just have to stick with that whole paradigm going forward, because otherwise our food costs go from here to here to here to here. Not everything can be on dining dollars, or else our food costs go like this, like this, like this. Dining dollars is a governor on human behavior, on your behavior, I'll admit that. Because when you run out of dining dollars, then it becomes house account. Or if you want something that's higher priced, that's going to be on house account. So it's the same way, and it works. I'll give you a good example that works campus-wide. We have a delivery charge that's $1.50. Now, what does it cost us to do that? It costs us about $5.50 to do the one delivery, labor and everything else. But we didn't take that on last year. We may take it on next year with the ancillary changes. That was one thing that we left alone. We went with other ancillary changes, which were more important. But think of this. If delivery was free, everybody would want that. And Occam would need to hire 20 people to do it. So because it's $1.50, which is below our costs, but big picture, it actually saves us a lot of money, because only certain people will, let's pay $1.50 and we'll get it delivered. But not everybody does that. It's a governor on human behavior, even that small cost. And that's the basic concept between house account and dining dollars. It's a governor on human behavior. And the higher priced things, you can still get them. Occam has a menu that's off the charts when we compare it to anybody else in the industry. His people come in, national people come in from Compass and Morrison. Sorry, Occam? Yeah, but they come in and they're totally blown away by what we do as a food program. Now, that doesn't resonate very well for the folks that eat here every day. But the folks that come in and go to every community across the board, They say, how do you do it? How do you have all these offerings? How do you have this quality of food? Well, it's called work, okay? But part of that whole paradigm are some tough choices that we've had to make, and it's, from the user standpoint, there's a lot of things that don't make any sense. But it's just simply that the higher priced items go to the dining dollars, go to house account, and the lower priced items go to dining dollars.
So you couldn't just charge us more on our dining dollars?
Some things we do. That's a governor, we do on some things most things on dining dollars are priced as if you purchase them at a convenience store, which that's the whole idea behind Liberty Market, is that it's a convenience store. It's not HEB. And we can't buy almost every product in there, we can't get from our wholesalers at near the low price that you can buy it at HEB. So it's a convenience store where things that you need right away, or unusual certain things that you want to buy there. But
Bart, I think somebody had the mic right there.
I've got a question on the occupancy rate at Lakeside Landing. When I first got here, you almost couldn't get in there. You had to be on the waiting list for a long time. Now, the last several months, I've noticed there are 3 or 4 units sitting empty over there with nobody wanting to move in. Why is that?
Well, it is staying about 95% occupancy, and when a unit turns over, sometimes the resident or the family will take their time to clear things out. You know, they have to give us a notice of about 60 days, so sometimes it's the lag time of that happening. I'll tell you, the waiting list for Lakeside Landing, about 75% are residents that live here. So, it's an ongoing triage, as Mary would say, in healthcare or assisted living between the need and who wants to get in there and when they want to make the move. But Lakeside's been really pretty strong. It's about 95% today.
That's not, it used to be almost 100%.
No, it has maybe several years ago, but the last couple of years it has not been. It's dipped down in the 80s, and so we've worked hard to get it back up close to full, and it's staying about 95%. So, yes, sir. Where else do we have Emily?
Okay, my question to Gordon is, who makes the decision? Who says this will cost so much on the house account, and who says this will count how much on the dining dollars? What person makes that decision?
me,
Okay, this is unknown. First of all, I've done a lot of study on CCRCs and life plan, and I just want to say, you two have a really difficult job, and you're doing it well. But, yes, I enjoy the clarity, or not the transparency here, but the clarity is, I'm kind of confused. For the last 4 out of 5 years, we've had a cash flow that was negative, from 1 million to 4 million? And then on the residency, it dropped down to 22. Have you looked at the increase of the prices that have driven people off and keeping people from coming in?
Yes, we look at the prices every year and continuously. I'm not sure what number you were referencing.
If you look on your graph, when you hit the 2024 prices, that's when people started to move out, and we haven't seen a lot of new people come in.
Yeah, really, when you let's look at fiscal year 24. We budgeted 48 move-ins, we got 43, but we exceeded cash on those entrance fees, about $100,000 per move-in, okay? About $80,000 per move-in. Why is that? Because we repriced coming into that 22, 23, we repriced the 50s refund plan and the 90 refund plan. And we used to have Those plans used to be zero. Almost nobody would take the 90 or the 50, either one, because they were priced so high. Actuarially, it just didn't work for anybody to do that. We repriced those at a lower rate, and we've got more people coming in to take the 50s and the 90s. We still are only at about 12% that are at those levels of the entire campus, even though we've had more come in lately. So we're not at a risk level as far as those refund of those entry fees, but there are higher cash levels coming in. Now, I'm not sure, I wish somebody could tell me, what happened between June of 24 and then June, July, August, and September of 24, okay? Because we had one of the best years ever for both cash collections and entrance fees in fiscal year 24 at 43. And then it stopped. Our rates did not change.
And the prices stayed the same.
And the prices stayed the same. Also, we didn't do an increase on entrance fees in January of this year. Now, what I've seen since January is a sea change as far as we had 5 move-ins in the first 6 months of fiscal year 25. Okay, we're gonna end up about 20 some, 21, 20 there. So these last 6 months, it has ramped back up. People are now willing, once they got through the election or what it is, our prices didn't change, our marketing didn't change. Our marketing has been more aggressive and we've had more leads because of the eligibility changes, but we've had more people interested, more people on the website, yet they're just not ready to pull the trigger.
And
Okay.
So is that, and Corey, is that unique to us? Because I've been told it's not unique.
Move in next year.
What's
We
that?
still have 14 people that have given us their 10% that will be moving in between first and second quarter of next year. So we're setting up great for next year, it's just timing. We've seen. that-
And we have 14 lined up for this next year already.
Okay, so help me
Okay.
understand then, if you come in on the zero plan, you will receive the total entrance fee within 3 years. The 10% and then 2.5%.
It amortizes out, yes.
Now, on the 90 plan, you will receive the monies, but it's restricted. You will have received cash, but your cash flow would be whatever you can earn on that. And sometimes if you get a 6%, say on a $800 or $800,000, it's gonna take you 10 plus years to get the same amount of cash as you would get, cash flow as you get on the zero plan.
Are you talking about from the resident's perspective or from the ARC perspective?
Well, it's
I mean, what you're giving
everybody's.
examples, but is that the experience of the resident or experience of the ARC that you're communicating?
That's why I'm asking the question, because I'm trying to clarify that. Because if you have a 90% plan and you take the cash in, it has to be restricted, is that correct?
No.
No? So you can recover it all in 3 years.
I'm not sure what recovery means.
And-
But it doesn't amortize out. If that person leaves, we own the whole 90,000, 90% back, all right? But it comes in, becomes days cash on hand. We can use it for any purpose that we need to. It has a special place on the balance sheet, okay? But it goes in Broadway Bank or goes to Frost Bank, and we can invest it. Let's like any other day's cash on hand, it's cash.
Okay, then.
It's a liability, and it shows up on the balance sheet as a liability for that person. Like I say, it's a line item on the balance sheet where we owe that person back, but it's not restricted in the nonprofit way that you would call restricted funds. We have people give us money every day for a specific purpose, okay? It's for flowers over by healthcare. It's for whatever it is that's only for that purpose. Those are restricted funds in a nonprofit. Entrance fees come in like that, and they're a liability, yes, we may have to pay that back to that person at some point, 90%, but we may not have to pay it back for 30 years, or we may have to pay it back in 3 months. But it's still our cash to use in that time frame until they want it back.
Okay, then, last part of the question is, we have the units that are ready, that are in turnover, somewhere around 13 now. Is that correct? So, we're losing, the longer it takes for you to turn over, we lose money, because we're losing the entrance fee and we're losing the maintenance fee. Is that correct?
Well, it's revenue that we don't collect.
It's
We're not
revenue.
writing a check for any of that money.
No, it's revenue we do not collect.
Right, right.
And so if you go from your average entrance fee and average maintenance fee, say if you have 13, it's somewhere around $2 million a year that's sitting there that we aren't collecting.
Well, I'll correct you, and you won't like what I'm gonna tell you. It's not 13, it's 59, 58, 60
Well,
empty units.
Well, it's
I mean, the math is terrible because 0 times 0 equals 0.
yes.
So that's why we've done all these initiatives, the rental program, the life steps, all these initiatives, we've pushed to explore the idea of expanded eligibility.
But
Because those
but hold on,
zeros
time
don't
out.
add up for anybody.
I understand where you're going on that,
Right.
but you have those that have collected 10%, and it's sitting there, and you're gonna have 38 in a year, in 52 weeks, which means you need to have the capability to turn the unit over in 1 week and 2.5 days. And I don't see that.
One thing that,
Yeah.
that you're not considering, if you don't mind, I'll.
Wait a minute, Courtney, let me address that first. So when somebody puts their money down 10%, did anybody in this room, once you put your 10% down, did you move in a week? No, nobody. We get the unit, once we get to 10%, we bust our backside to get that ready in 60 days. Because sometimes they want one that needs a lot of work, okay? Or maybe they don't, maybe it's ready to move in. But they have 60 days, I know the number, but I'm looking at Courtney for confirmation. They have 60 days, we have 60 days to get that ready, they have 60 days then to move in. So we get it ready. So there's always this time lag coming along to get the 10%, they move in 60 days later. Lord willing, the creek don't rise. So it's
No,
not, you're doing the math, but it doesn't work that way.
And you know, the short answer to your question is empty units, lost revenue. It would behoove all of us to get occupancy up, and if you want to get behind something, get behind eligibility. I'm sorry. We are, this whole sea of the room, we can go after about 10%. This is how many we can actually go for. So that's the challenge. We're limiting ourselves to this small group in the whole senior living marketplace. It's all we can go after. We have a lot of empty units. We're doing everything we can within our eligibility restrictions to get occupancy up. The rental program, the life steps. But the elephant in the room is eligibility. So if we were to change that, we have this whole market to go after instead of that little market. So I'm really sorry, but it's 5 minutes after 3. Tom, we'd be happy to visit with you after the meeting in private.
At this point,
because
you've helped me, and I
Okay.
appreciate it. I didn't mean this in a
no.
combative, I just didn't understand.
Yeah, and that's why we could spend some
Thank
time
you.
with you up here if that'll be helpful. And let's take one more question and we'll wrap up. Oh boy. Let's do here.
Steve, the renters that come in here, what do they have access to?
Okay, well, there may be some in this room, so they have access to the full complement of amenities. What they don't have access to is the discounts in healthcare and the charitable assistance fund. Okay, that's primarily what the difference is.
They can use all of the amenities other than those?
Yes, right. Yeah. Again, the trade-off, when they move to healthcare, they pay full market rates, just like a direct entry would, and they do not get the charitable assistance fund. So there's some trade-offs.
There are several class action suits with timeshares where someone owns something and now they're letting renters come in and they feel it's a disadvantage to the owners because they're paying a maintenance fee to keep all the other items up.
Right.
So
Well, there would be subletting, which we don't allow here. Subletting, we don't do that. And many CCRCs across the country have rentals, including Blue Skies. A lot of them, it's not an unusual thing to do. So we're not the first, and we're well protected. We have an attorney that's well versed in that, and I used to run a rental community, so it's a good initiative. And for example, our friends across town have 50 renters, 50. 50 times 5,000 a month equals, it's a big number. That everybody in here would have to pay if we didn't have the rental program. So that's why we did it, is another way to get occupancy up, to raise revenue without it being on the existing residents. But it's not perfect. All right, Ms.
Yeah,
Key.
this is a question for Gordon. I average giving back $200 to $300 a month in food, dining dollars that I don't use. Where does that money go?
Where's the question, back here? Right. Doesn't go anywhere. It's called opportunity lost,
Okay, gotcha.
okay? There's no accounting for it.
So,
You didn't use it,
yeah, so for
That's-
those that go at the
sorry.
end of their month and they go buy 10 pizzas, does that help you or hurt you?
well, I hope they don't do that, because part of the whole plan is that people eat one, if people can eat that in a day or 10 days, God bless them. But, no, that doesn't help. I budget food costs. And everybody's got the same dining dollars. If they use them, they don't use them. That's their individual piece of that pie, if we look at it that way. But globally, the experience of the population as a whole of using their dining dollars or not using their dining dollars is only a minuscule change from when I started to now. And because we have a big enough sample here, 600 residents, and they have dining dollars, whether it was used to be 13, now it's 20. Well, they use them the way they prefer to use them. So some people use them all up and more, other people give some back. People manage, when we had 13, I know there were several people came to me and said, well, I get 2 meals a day out of that. Okay, good, that's good. People get 2 meals a day, some of them do out of the 20. They work that system. But it's only a system to govern human behavior in that if everything's free, our costs, if everything's dining dollars, our food costs go out of sight. We can't afford it.
That's not the question.
That's not
I'm
the
just
question.
asking you, when I give back a couple of $100 every month, it's imaginary money, whether I use it or not.
It goes nowhere.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, there's no, Lisa's over here, she can attest, we do no accounting for that.
Just a simple question.
Dollars, they just disappear.
Just a simple question.
They're points. It's, I've explained it before, it's like you have, it expires. So after they're gone, there's no value.
All right, everyone, it's about 10 after 3. So again, we'll stay up here if anybody wants to come up and talk in private, and hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks for your time and attention. We really appreciate it.